Oh, are we already? Oh, good evening, everyone. It's the Transportation and Parking Commission meeting. This is the first one actually for 2025. So Happy New Year, everyone. Nice to see you all during for this year, the first time. Hopefully everyone had a great year and a good start of the year. Let's start with the roll call, right? The first thing is roll call. Okay, let's go ahead.
Roll call. Commissioner Amirian,
Present.
Commissioner Bonston,
Yes.
Commissioner Lester,
Here.
Commissioner Ordubegian,
Here.
Student Commissioner Makirchian,
Here.
Chair Avagian.
Here. Okay, next is flag salute. Let's rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next, posting of the agenda.
The agenda for the January 27, 2025 regular meeting of the Glendale Transportation and Parking Commission was posted by January 23, 2025 before 5 p.m. on the bulletin board outside of City Hall.
Madam Chair, perhaps I should clarify that the January meeting of the TPC is a special meeting. It nevertheless complies with all posting requirements under the Brown Act. So just for the record, this is a special meeting of the Commission.
Got it. Thank you very much. I have a question. And usually it's being posted 48 hours before, right? When is it the regular meeting?
The Brown Act requires 72 hours notice for all regular meetings.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay, next one, approval of the minutes.
Minutes of the Transportation and Parking Commission regular meeting on October 28, 2024. Commissioner Amirian,
Does anyone have questions?
Yeah. Well, no. I'll move to approve the minutes.
I apologize for
No
that.
worries. No worries. It was a good prompt.
Okay, do we need a second for this? Yes?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Okay, so moved by Commissioner Amirian, seconded by Commissioner Ordubagian to approve the minutes.
Commissioner Amirian,
Yes.
Commissioner Bonston,
Yes.
Commissioner Lester,
Yes.
Commissioner Ordubegian,
Yes.
Chair Avagian.
Yes. Okay, next item is the presentations.
There are no presentations on the agenda.
Okay, consent item.
There are no consent items on the agenda.
Item number 6, action item, selection of ex officio non-voting student members.
And Madam Chair, perhaps the clerk can read items 6A1 and 6A2 into the record, please.
Resolution, item 6A, resolution amending the process for selecting ex officio non-voting student members of the Transportation and Parking Commission. 1, resolution adopting procedural rules for the Transportation and Parking Commission.
Okay, do we vote on each item separately? Item A1 and then item A2?
That's correct, Chair Avagian, and perhaps I can give a brief staff report for item 6A1. At your last meeting in October of last last year, the commission heard a report from the ad hoc selection committee for student ex officio members, comprised of Commissioners Amirian and Bonston. And the selection committee brought back 3 noteworthy comments relative to the process for selecting ex officio student members. Those comments were that relative to a senior level student, an appointment date in October and a fixed 1-year term might put a senior level student in a position where they had to either resign from the Transportation and Parking Commission before their 1-year term elapsed, or simply not appear for the remaining meetings in their term. And so the selection committee recommended amendments to the governing resolution to allow for terms of up to 1 year, so potentially a duration shorter than 1 year, which was not contemplated in the resolution, as well as an appointment cycle from June to June, for a full one-year term rather than from October to October, coinciding with the academic year. Additionally, the selection committee noted that the commission might find itself in a situation in which an ad hoc selection committee need not be convened every year. If, for instance, as I believe was the case with this past cycle, the selection committee identified more than 2 potential students to serve as ex officio student commissioners. So as the commission unanimously passed a motion directing staff to prepare amendments to the governing resolution reflective of those comments. We did so. The resolution before you makes those changes, notably in section 2B, the term is amended to provide for a service period of up to 1 year. The commencement of a regular term will begin in June, but the commission can also fill a student commissioner seat after any vacancy occurs. So the commission is not limited to making appointments in June. And then notably in section 2B6, the selection committee is expressly authorized to establish an eligibility list, which relative to this commission's last discussion in October means that if the selection committee identifies a 3rd student to fill a future vacancy, the commission need not convene an ad hoc committee every year. The commission can simply direct staff to check the eligibility list, see if there's still a student who is qualified under the resolution to serve, who remains a Glendale resident, who is of the proper age and grade level, and who remains interested in serving. Those are the substantive amendments to the resolution. We also made conforming changes to the resolution that were simply necessary to conform the rest of the resolution to the committee's or to the commission's motion. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you have.
I have a question, actually. When you're saying that you're going to have staff to check whether there are students who are still interested and they're still residents of Glendale and everything else, that's for the period of 1 year, right? It's not like you're going to do an interview and then we're going to keep going back to the same candidates for, I don't know, for 2 years, 3 years. So every year it's still going to be anyway interviews happening.
No, Chair Vagian. So the direction that we received was to establish a system whereby, and without, maybe we could make this a little bit more concrete, this past ad hoc selection committee identified a student who they had recommended to the commission for appointment this coming June.
Yes, this one I know.
The resolution as it previously existed contemplated that the commission would nevertheless solicit applications, do a recruitment, and establish or convene an ad hoc selection committee. But you might not necessarily need to do that. If you have a sitting college student, you have to use Commissioner Amirian's words, you have a high school student on the bench, so to speak. The amendments allow you as the commission not to convene a new selection committee, but rather to appoint from a previous recruitment. So you could choose, as the commission, to direct staff to check the eligibility list, or as the commission, you could say, you know what, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years has passed. We feel it's time for a fresh recruitment, so we're going to vote to abandon the eligibility list, and we're going to convene a new recruitment. The changes really afford the commission the type of flexibility that we as staff heard the selection committee say at the last meeting was not afforded in the way the resolution previously read.
I understand it was a long process, and Commissioner Bonston and Commissioner Amirian were part of it. So thank you very much for your time and dedication and effort on it. But I personally would think that we maybe should have a limit set so we don't constantly go back to the same applicants and then check whether they're eligible or not. And then also that's going to lock opportunity for the newcomers to apply. And then also when we are opening opportunity for students to apply, that's also another form of community relations and letting them know that the commission exists, and then there is this opportunity and new people are going to come who have never heard before about a commission and or the opportunity. So I don't know if anyone else has a comment about it, but I would like to hear what you think.
If I may, I think the changes, and I appreciate the work that staff did, and it feels like you heard exactly what we were trying to accomplish. But mostly, I think Mr. Israel nailed the summation, which is it gives us the flexibility to do just that. So the changes to the resolution give us the flexibility to decide, in the case of what we spoke about in October, was that we identified two potentials, one serving now to our left, welcome. We're talking about you as you sit here without introducing you, and I'm sure you'll get an opportunity. But also, in the case of the young man, Kevin Barati, I believe his name was, in his case, for him to know that, if he's willing, he's able. And that way, we're also not required to do this process every single time. We can, and we can discuss it at any time. It just gives us flexibility. And so as long as that flexibility exists, we can do whatever we'd like.
And then how long does the student commissioner serves on the board? For 4 years, 1 year, 1 year?
For,
Oh, it's a 1 year.
so under the previous and under the revised resolution, it would be up to 1 year. As I briefly recall mentioning in our October meeting, there was nothing expressly in the resolution preventing you from reappointing a student commissioner, but that also conflicted with the language that contemplated that you have a recruitment every year. So the amendments that we've prepared make it clear that you can reappoint, as the commission, you can reappoint a sitting student commissioner to a subsequent term or to multiple subsequent terms of up to 1 year each.
Okay. Okay, and Commissioner Boston?
Hi. Yeah, I just, to reiterate the flexibility that it does afford, especially this first year, which we find ourselves in a unique circumstance of appointing the members so very late in the year and knowing that we're trying to adjust into a June timeframe, that, it may be in years subsequent to this that it would be a yearly basis. But it also is a very thorough process, and I can imagine administratively somewhat, difficult to pull off every year if it were absolutely necessary, and if there were options that wasn't necessary, that might be appropriate.
I think it opens up doors for us to either reappoint or get somebody new, so there will be no conflict or there will be no hurdles for us to pick a student commissioner.
And then one more question. Let's say if there is a student that wants to apply, but there is no recruitment process. Is there an open application process there for them to apply anytime, maybe be considered if there is an opportunity, or no, if it's closed, then no one can apply?
It would be incumbent upon the commission to open the recruitment. If the commission doesn't act to open the recruitment, staff would be taking our cues, their cues from you.
So there was not going to be one-by-one cases. It just either open a recruitment and the whole process again, or not do it and then select from existing candidates. So it's not like one person applies and we review it.
And they're not mutually exclusive, Chair Avagi. And so you could ask staff, you could direct staff to check the eligibility list to determine whether any qualified candidates remain qualified and remain interested in serving, and at the same time open a recruitment so that you can have the greatest number of potential applicants for a student commissioner seat, or you could go one way or the other.
And Chair, if there's anybody that is watching or reaches out, I would just encourage them to reach out to you directly or to reach out to staff and express their interest. And that will definitely then allow us to, for it to be on our radar. What we were looking to do, Commissioner Bronstein and I, we were looking to just give us the flexibility as well as limit the amount of time that we spend administratively on this issue. So hopefully with this resolution, and the amendments that are made, we have an idea of where we're going, and we have the flexibility to change course if necessary, if we decide as a body that that's what we'd like to do. But we have the flexibility now.
Anyone else wants to make a comment? No? So do we move forward in voting for item A1?
If there's a motion, Chair Vaughan, you can entertain motions for 6A1.
Okay, yeah, do I have a motion? 6A1.
I'll make the motion.
It's been moved by,
And I'll second it.
it's been moved by Commissioner Lester and seconded by Commissioner Amirian.
Commissioner Mirian,
Yeah. Yes.
Commissioner Bonston,
Yes?
Commissioner Lester,
Yes.
Commissioner Ordubagian,
Yes.
Student Commissioner McGerchem,
Yes.
Chair Avagian.
Yes.
And the record can just reflect that the student commissioner is expressing an opinion, but it's not a binding vote for the commission. So it would not be counted with the vote tally.
Just a follow-up question about that. So will that be the operating norm for the commission, that the student ex officio member will express an opinion during the vote, and that won't count?
That's not a typical process, no, Commissioner Marion.
Okay.
Typically the student member, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
Typically, the student members' input would be welcome during questions and comments, but a vote count would not be taken.
Yeah, so I would recommend strongly that, just given the fact that the student is an ex officio non-voting member, that of course the comments and questions be open to them, but that they not be called during roll call during the vote. That's what I would suggest, just so that we don't lead to any confusion regarding the public's perception of who's making the decisions on the commission.
Agreed. Is that something that we need to modify?
No.
in the-
That'll just be the process going forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Amirian. Okay, moving to the next item, item 6A2. Is there a presentation before do we make a motion and then second, then do the presentation, or?
So in terms of a presentation, Chair Vaughan, and I apologize for the mask, I have 2 toddlers and they're both in school, and so anything that they pick up, I pick up. I'm not feeling so well, so this is for your benefit, but I apologize if it inhibits my communicating at all.
We're happy that you're here.
The item 6A2 is a motion that I believe and I don't want to speak for the selection committee, but I believe that the selection committee wanted to bring at the October meeting under the rules as they existed at the time. That motion would not have been in order with respect to the governing resolution. The resolution you just adopted takes effect immediately. Now that motion can be introduced. So I leave it to the selection committee if they have any comments with respect to Kevin Barati's candidacy for student commissioner. Otherwise, we've prepared the motion for your consideration.
Okay.
Okay, I will just introduce myself. My name is Adara, as you already know. I am an ex officio commissioner, so happy to be here and join the team. And I have one question. If, for example, if the student resigns, what's going to be next? Like, are you going to recruit another student to replenish his seat or her seat? Or, for example, the student fails to come, are you gonna is there gonna be impeachment kind of, or what? Like, I'm just interested how that process is gonna be.
It's a very good question, student commissioner, and welcome to the Transportation and Parking Commission. The answer to your question is if a student resigns from the commission, or the commission, the student commissioner, maybe not in so many words, expresses that they are no longer going to appear for the commission, then either staff, based upon the resolution that the commission just adopted, the commission can either pull from an eligibility list if one exists, or not. If one doesn't exist, then the commission can direct staff to open a recruitment
Okay.
to fill the seat.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for the question, Student Commissioner McCutcheon.
Maybe I would add,
Attend every one of our meetings.
Yeah,
and
I
we'll
will.
just
I'm
go-
committed.
But if it is, something happens that you cannot attend because of your schooling and all that stuff,
Yeah.
that'll be quite all right.
No, I'm responsible. I'm committed. I will come. By
And-
the way, I like the amendment regarding the diminishing the how to say the start date and the end date of the student commissioner. How to say that the
Commencement?
duration? Yeah, commencement. Yeah. And I like that because, for example, I'm a student who's going to be transferred fall, and I don't know how is going to my occupation be. And I think that was a good amendment to kind of pull back it to June. Yeah, it was June. Yeah, I think it's a good.
Okay, so we need to make a motion.
We have approval. I like her already. Yeah, so it's great. Excellent.
Okay, so.
So in terms of the motion, I'm going to remake the motion that I made during the October meeting. And if you have it written down so that we can just,
we do,
excellent.
Commissioner Marion. So
Thank you.
it would be, the motion would be that with respect to the report to the Transportation and Parking Commission dated today's date, January 27, 2025, pertaining to the appointment of ex officio non-voting student members, the Transportation and Parking Commission hereby appoints Kevin Barati as ex officio non-voting student member of the TPC with a term commencing January 27, 2025, today's date, and concluding June 23rd, 2025. That would be, I believe, the fourth Monday in June.
Is there a second?
I'll make a second to prove it.
It's been moved by Commissioner Amirian, seconded by Commissioner Ordobegian.
Well,
Yes, so I guess, roll call? Okay, let's go ahead.
Commissioner Mirian,
Yes.
Commissioner Bonston,
Yes?
Commissioner Lester,
Yes.
Commissioner Ordubegian,
yes.
Chair Avagian.
Yes. So now officially welcome Student Commissioner McCutcheon
Thank
to
you.
Transportation and Parking Commission. It's really, I'm really happy to see students being active, and it's always good to have your opinion from a student perspective, so welcome.
Thank you.
And Chair, if you don't mind, if you would just take a minute and just introduce yourself, let us know where you're a student and what your interests are, just briefly. I think that would really help the
Yeah,
commission.
Of course. So currently I'm a student. I'm studying in Glendale. I'm not actually Glendale Valley College, and I'm gonna be transferred to UCLA. I have strong ambitions to transfer next fall. I already applied, and I'm interested in all the intricacy of politics. So I'm majoring in political science, with a bright perspective to go to law school. So yeah, that's pretty much. Yeah.
Congratulations and
Thank
good
you.
luck.
Thank you. Hopefully.
Chair Vagi, maybe I can just take a point of personal privilege to say I'm also a graduate of UCLA with a political science major, and happy to talk to our student commissioner about careers in the law at any time and in public service.
Nice. Okay, so moving to next item, I guess. Item number 7A, information regarding extension of street parking time limit up to 4 hours.
Chairperson Vagian, if we can, we would actually like to switch the order and go with item B first, so if we can have that written into the record. So this item B, obviously we heard what the commission had to say relative to bringing additional items to the commission for the review consideration. So this item is a broad overview, and we felt because of the fact that the topic's pretty meaty, and I think this is a jump-off point from a commission perspective to get a good understanding of the large operation, and then we can start diving into the specific particulars that you guys may be interested in, because the parking operation is a large one. So this is a meaty presentation, so we felt that this would give you guys the information at least at the high level, but we could then start drilling down much deeper as required by the commission.
Okay, yes. Okay, so
So we can read the second item into the record.
Okay.
Overview of parking services section responsibilities.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I'd like to introduce our parking manager, Ted Dombrowski.
Good evening, Commission. Good evening, Commission. Chair Vagian and Commission. My name is Tad Dombrowski. I'm the parking manager for the City of Glendale. I've been here 17 years now. And just going to go over some quick highlights on what it is. I've got some questions that came up the last time in the October meeting that I will cover at the end of it, and then we can dive into any details you would like. So this is a map that's on the website. It shows our parking lots and our parking structures. It's about, I'm going to say, a little over 5,000 spaces between the downtown and Montrose and the college area. It gives a starting point for how spread out it is over all of Glendale, and each area has its own dynamics. For parking services, we have some key core sections that we really focus on. One of them is customer service. We take all sorts of calls, all sorts of inquiries, and interact with the public a lot. So whether it's proactively getting out in front of something, trying to communicate messages outwardly, or reacting to a lot of the questions and challenges that they're having, we're the face of that. Garage management, we have 4 garages in our downtown that we hire a third-party operator to manage for us. We also coordinate with our Public Works Facilities Division in some of the capital improvements and maintenance and those types of pieces. Parking lot management, we coordinate with our maintenance services for asphalt repair, meter collection, that's where our meter shop lives, repairs, signage, a whole bunch of different pieces to the lots themselves. And then we also coordinate with facilities on capital improvements. Our parking enforcement program is overseen by the police department, and we work together with them to oversee the contractor, which is SP Plus for parking enforcement. The contractor was brought in 2018. Before that, it was done in-house at the police department, and part of that was so that they would be able to bring a lot of the technology that was more modern and much better than what we had been currently using. So efficiency, one of those things was a bike patrol that was added in 2022 that for the downtown area getting around is much more efficient. Whoops, one too many. Capital improvements. I put a list here of a few that we're touching on right now. Marketplace and Orange Street elevator upgrades, bringing them up to ADA compliance and regulatory compliance. Our Civic Center garage out here, the stairwells, they are, the surface of them is being resurfaced so that they're non-slip. And then we have painting and sign replacement that's going to be happening. We're in the design phase now and scoping that out for the downtown garages. Parking fund oversight for the revenues and expenses for everything that's in the parking fund. Ultimately, I wind up overseeing that and getting into every detail, whether it's the revenue collection side and all the way down to the reporting side on all of the expenses that are spent. And then also, along with that comes any recommendations for parking rate adjustments as they would come up. Technology improvements have been a big focus for the last several years. We got the parking meters on Brand Boulevard, I'm going to say 2009, 2010, somewhere in that neighborhood. When we first put them in, they were pay by space, as that was kind of the industry standard. And it meant putting a space number on the pavement, getting all of that programming involved, getting the signage that way. Then it kind of transitioned to where pay by plate was used as the parking credential, much more in the industry. And as we were doing other things like the enforcement efficiencies we were talking about with license plate cameras and things like that, it made sense to kind of package all of that together. It also allowed for the addition of pay by phone, which happened in 2023, as another mobile payment that we would be able to provide on top of that. So EV charging stations, solar, there's a whole bunch of pieces that we're working on to implement on the technology side. And then there's a variety of additional responsibilities, whether it's RFPs or reviewing parking exceptions, lots of special events, weddings, funerals, there's stuff that happens all the time. One of the things I did want to focus on, this was a huge effort back in 2019, and we did a downtown study and a Montrose parking study. We had identified that there were some challenges with the parking program as it existed in those two areas, and looked to see what the best practices were with others. We hired a consultant who brought in a lot of great ideas for what this is and kind of gave us a roadmap for what we should be seeing for those two areas for the future and how we can best adjust the parking management strategies and policies to fit with that. Unfortunately, I'm just going to add on to that. Unfortunately, right after we blessed all of these policies in 2019, COVID hit, and so it changed a lot of the dynamics. And since this was kind of a snapshot in time, right now at this time, we're revisiting that and looking at a lot more of those policies. And in some cases, going further than we did before. I'll use the Montrose one as an example because we're diving into the employee parking program that has been here for, I think, 3 decades and hasn't been changed. And it's a little outdated. It's not working the way it was intended. So we're going to dive into a bunch of the details on that with the consultant and get recommendations for best practices, get a whole bunch of pieces that we can look to turn that program into something that better manages the parking in that area. We work together with the community hand in hand, whether it's the community college, whether it's the Montrose Shopping Park, the Greater Downtown Association. We have all of these are, as I said first, a lot of the parking questions, complaints, issues come in through customer service, and we're aware of what's happening out there and proactively reach out to those organizations when we can to try and get on top of this, to try and address any issues that come up along the way. One thing I wanted to highlight for the TPC is the preferential parking program. We haven't been here in a while just because of COVID, but the TPC has been empowered to make the decisions on preferential parking when we bring it to the TPC for a report. We take a petition from someone who'd like it on their street, they get signatures, meet a bunch of criteria, and then we prepare a staff report that will say very clearly that the TPC is deciding whether we should implement preferential parking on this street or not implement it. That's something that's done at the TPC level, whereas in some of our special preferential districts, they went to the council level. We have one in the college area, so all of the college impacts, it didn't just intersect with this street or that street, it's the entire area. And then also with South Brand, we have a similar problem with the dealerships where a lot of the employees were filtering into the neighborhood. So we have a couple of those. Those have a little bit different criteria. If you meet the petition process, we just automatically do it and don't even bring it in front of TPC because they're in that specified zone already. So that brings me to the end of my presentation, but I did want to address some of the questions that came up in the prior meeting. There were some questions regarding signs and hours, and it was specific to something on Brand. I'm not exactly sure which one it was, but we work very closely with Maintenance Services, who handles all the signs in the city of Glendale, whether it's stop signs, speed signs, parking signs, any of those regulations. So when it comes to parking regulations, there's a lot of different determinations that would be made in the process of, let's say, changing a sign that was out there. If looking back, one of the things that happened in the 2019 study, for instance, is we changed our hours of operation for the downtown, which included Brand as well as the other areas. It used to be 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And based on occupancy studies and everything else, we switched it over to 8 a.m. to midnight. And so when that change was made, changing all of the signage in the downtown area all at once was challenging. And it was done sometimes we replaced these signs. These were already on a sign replacement program, so let's do this block with brand new signs. Other signs, we did a placard that would be bolted over just the signs that would do this. There are even times when there's a sign knocked down or something, it's damaged beyond repair, we have to get something else out there. They only have this one in the sign shop, and we'll put a placard over the Except Sunday so that it meets the same purpose as what was initially out there until we can get a replacement sign in place. So there are some different things that come. I think a lot of those different scenarios are very specific to what the issue is that's brought to our attention when it's brought up. Another issue that came up had to do with parking citations. There, as you can imagine, there is some challenges that come in when we have a third-party vendor that could be, or a meter that is being paid at. So whether it's at the meter or whether it's through your own phone, that information, once it goes through, has to be communicated into the back-end enforcement system. And how that's done and the process and the logistics of all of that, it is challenging. There are pieces, sometimes it happens instant with no lag. Sometimes there are lags, depending on wireless activity, depending on a variety of other things. What I will say generally is there are a lot of different parts to if we issue a citation that shouldn't have been. And whether that happens when the officer is issuing the citation and he's hit print and it's already in the system and he no longer has the option to void, or whether it happened just before he hit print and it hasn't actually been printed and he has some flexibility to be able to void the site. All of those things play into the dynamics of creating the policies for him as well. There's also a lot of de-escalation techniques. As you can imagine, people are usually not happy when they're getting a parking citation. So the officers themselves do go through a lot of de-escalation training, and one of those tools is, I'm sorry, there's really nothing I can do about this. You'll have to contest it online, or I can work with getting a supervisor over here. So there are certain things that they will say depending on the circumstance that has to do with the way that they're trained. There are other times that we found where we have problems in training and in other things, and we need to address it. So I want that feedback. If we're not doing something that we should be, I would like to hear about it so that we can make improvements. That's the goal of this. So a lot of those are very specific to that situation too. One other thing I just wanted to mention, because this is the kind of thing that does come up occasionally. I had somebody who was asking us about a parking citation. They were complaining, they were screaming, they were so angry. And I can only imagine, this was 20 minutes after they had already interacted with the officer and tried to scream and yell at them. And then they finally got to me and called me. And when I looked, I said, well, give me the details on the citation. And we looked in the back end of the system. The citation was a warning. They had taken it, it looks just like a regular citation, but it was zero amount due. And it was just informing them, but it was tracking it so that they're not going to get another warning. The next time it will be a citation. But the fact that it was zero due, as soon as I said that to them, oh, I don't have to pay for this? And the attitude completely changed. So there's a lot that just has to happen over time, and communication is a big key to this. Commissioner Orbian, you mentioned the parking task force. We have done a lot of work on Montrose, and I think that our policies have been outdated up there for quite some time. I do get involved for a lot of things, and I will say that the downtown area and the Montrose area are the two areas that have a lot of different dynamics that involve a lot of staff time, involve a lot of effort in order to focus on getting the best policy that we possibly can and put in place, and practical as well. Who hires the third-party company came up with regards to the enforcement and their contract structure. There was, in 2018, when we went out and we went from doing this in-house to doing this, to bringing on a contractor, we had a team of, I think, about 10 people that were brought up that were a variety of people from Public Works, from police department. There was even somebody from Glendale Community College who came and sat on the panel in order to provide a variety of input on getting the right partnership with the right company to do this. The contract structure is very simple. The city pays for all costs related to enforcement, whether that's staffing, whether that's vehicles, technology, any of that, plus a fixed monthly management fee. So there is no incentive. They can write one ticket or they can write 10,000. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change their fee. It is very simply structured so that they will provide whatever we need. And if we do have a problem, as a matter of fact, this happened during COVID where they were on board and we had COVID and we started issuing safety-only sites and pared down a variety of our sites, then we told them, you can find other places for those people. We don't need this. We only need this structure now. And we were able to, the contract was flexible enough where we could reduce the amount of officers we had out there, and the city doesn't get charged for that. So we have a not to exceed contract at the maximum staffing level, but we continually monitor that to make sure that we're not overissuing sites or not adequately enforcing certain areas. So it's a balance. It's something that we have to stay on top of regularly, and a lot of the community provides feedback on what that is. Lastly, parking meters extend by phone or extend at the meter. Originally, this was not part of the meters when we brought them in. It was added, I can't remember the year, but it was added as a feature when the manufacturer of the parking meters brought it. And we changed the software to where now it offered you the opportunity to put in your phone number and get a reminder text. Unfortunately, the manufacturer of the meter said we are not going to be going down this road. There are plenty of third-party mobile providers now that had come into the marketplace, and so they were going to be discontinuing that as a feature for the meters. The timing worked out well for us because we had also looked at getting a third-party mobile platform, which ultimately became Pay by Phone, and we wanted it not just for the T2 meters in the downtown, but we wanted it for the single-space meters as well. That allowed places like Montrose or up by the college where we only have the old school meters that everybody is used to traditionally. We could put a sticker on them and say, download the app. And now you could pay with credit card and you could still have your traditional coin, and it lowers the cost to the city. So we were able to go out and implement that at the same time that the meter manufacturing was discontinuing the use of the Extend Your Time Online. I would encourage everybody to download the app and to look through it. It's a feature, it's optional. If you want to pay at the meter, you can, but you also have the opportunity to download that. I figure I might as well use this as an opportunity to say, we do not use QR codes, and it is something that has come up repeatedly. So for anybody who's watching, it's not ours. Don't pay using a QR code. If you download the app, then it will direct you to the right site. But there had been, it was a conscious decision not to use QR codes, as convenient as it is for the customer. When we were making the decision, we had already heard about cases where QR stickers were being put out there fraudulently. And for us to be able to see more than 5,000 parking spaces every day to be able to make sure that there's not a fraudulent QR code out there is just impossible. So we don't use them. We encourage you to download the app if you'd like to use it. And they have the option in the app of extending your time up to the time limit. So if you parked in a 2-hour space and you only paid an hour initially, it'll give you a reminder text. It'll say, do you want to add 1 more hour? You have all of that flexibility inside the app. So we were able to do it. And now that projects over to our single space meters and not just the multi-space platform that we had originally. So it's actually been enhanced over what we had originally. That concludes the end of my presentation. I'm sure there will be questions, so fire away.
Sure, Commissioner Ordebagian.
First and foremost, Tad, I'd like to thank you and applaud you for a fantastic, I've known you for that 17 years that you've been here in the City of Glendale. One of the advantages of having you in City of Glendale is your engagements. What we have been able to accomplish in Montrose is that you were always available. One of the things that we're lacking here in City of Glendale, downtown, is to having an engagement like this. I think Commissioner Amarian mentioned that before, that nobody knows who to contact and everything else. For us up in Montrose, we know, we call Tad, and we address all the issues. We have meetings, and we move forward. So the continuity of all these subjects are there. So we know who to contact, how to get a hold of you, how to get appropriate people that they can address any kind of an issue that there is. But there's no such thing. I mean, I know you guys are involved in downtown Glendale as well, but there is no tool, basically, a protocol that, let's say, Downtown Glendale Association homeowners can contact, or maybe Brand Boulevard or the cars. They don't know. So they call the city, and the call most often time get lost. So I don't know if you have anything in works to be able to set something like that for City of Glendale. So if anybody has any questions regarding parking citations or regarding signage, if they have issues, for example, for us, if you have an issue, we do acknowledge that there is a signage issue We don't need to do a study on it. We don't need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on saying that, oh, we do need a signage up here. We call you up, you show up, you say, yeah, we do need a signage up here. And then one thing is very clear for us. We know exactly where the funds gets for your department basically come from. So we know what we can expect or not. So those makes things very easy for everybody to navigate and move forward. So I don't know if there is any possibility of setting something like this up for downtown Glendale so they can benefit out of these things too. For example, that parking meter stickers that we came out and it was implemented first in Montrose. And that was one of the great things that you guys did. And the other advantage we have is that we do not use QR code because the police department told us that people put stickers on it and people scan it and they give money to somebody that's not authorized. So those are all the good things. By just being involved together, being able to communicate to see what works and what doesn't, therefore we have everything done without spending extra money, wasting any money on studies and things like that, and it was very effective. So if you can, I think, I don't know if it is possible to set something up with some of the stakeholders in the city of Glendale downtown. Maybe that will be beneficial as well and bring the cost down so we can be more profitable and more, being able to do things that benefits everybody. And that, again, thank you very much for all you do. You're fantastic.
Thank you. Any more comments? Commissioner Amirian?
Yeah, I really appreciate the thoroughness of your presentation, Tad. I do have a couple questions. So just generally speaking for the public and for the commission, what is the purpose of parking enforcement from the city's view?
So, Commissioner Marion, I would say parking enforcement is absolutely an encouragement to follow the rules that are put in place. The goal is to create the turnover that is needed. Ideally, whatever mechanism it is, whether it's a parking meter, whether it's a 2-hour regulation, whatever it is put there for a reason. And the reason is usually to create the turnover that's needed for those businesses to succeed, for the residents to not be impacted, for whatever those reasons are. So the parking enforcement is the deterrent and is used to encourage following the proper policies and procedures.
I appreciate that. And you mentioned that the contract structure, that there was no incentive for writing more tickets. Do we know what SP Plus's incentive structure is for their pay structure is for their enforcement officers?
We do. We mandated that and put it into the contract where it is a fixed hourly rate.
Great. Another question is, in the course of enforcing a parking meter, if the enforcement official notices another infraction having to do with the car, notably a front license plate, where does the revenue from the front license plate penalty go to?
It ultimately winds up in the parking fund.
So it ends up with the city of Glendale.
Yes.
And was that pushed as from the city side of enforcing those types of violations, or the police side?
So, Commissioner Marion, great question. I can tell you that it has been a recent policy shift over the last year that they have started enforcing more for no front plate. The reason behind that had to do with a lot of the for the practical person, the tolling cameras and things like that were not able to capture it. We have a speed pilot that was Glendale was one of 6 cities that is included in that, and part of that enforcement is going to be capturing license plates on cameras. It may be that the front of the vehicle is the plate that we're actually able to see clearest. So PD has definitely stepped up both on a parking infraction side as well as vehicles that are just out there driving on the street to try and enforce that they have both the front and the rear license plate on the vehicle.
Excellent. And then what are the approximate administrative costs of an appeal to the city?
That is a great question. I would say, so we have streamlined as much as we can to have a very efficient process in doing it. It is really all embedded in staff time because somebody has to read through that, has to make a determination. But we have automated every process beyond that so that once a determination is made, it is check a few boxes on the computer, hit send, and it goes through the citation processing and fulfillment center. The citation, should it be waived or dismissed because that was the ruling on it, then automatically the letters go out, the system is changed with a few clicks of the mouse. So we've tried to automate it and keep those costs as low as possible, but it still is going to take as long as it would take to read however much you write in the contest. And we don't limit customers. If they want to write 3 pages, we'll listen to them. So you can't limit it to 140 characters and say that's all you get. If they provide pictures, we'll look through the pictures. So we do want to see as much information as possible so that we can make the best determination.
I'm curious whether you have the ability to tell the commission approximately how much total hours of that staff time administrative appeals took, so that we have some idea of the costs of dealing with the appeals versus the revenue that's coming in.
So I will say there's a couple things related. I'll try and get to a simple answer, but one thing that we did within the last year is we actually added a QR code on the individual citation. It is generated only for that individual citation. So as soon as you click on that QR code, it goes into the system where it pre-populates your citation number and your license plate. It is a unique QR code. So if they went somewhere else, it's on the citation itself, and each one is printed individually. What it allows you to do is scan the QR code and you can contest it right from your phone. So we've made it as easy as possible on the customer side. On the back end side, all we can do is streamline the process and automate it as much as we can, but it still is a time consuming process. I can tell you we get in the neighborhood of 600 per month.
And what percentage would that be of the total?
And we're issuing in the neighborhood of 10,000 per month.
So 6%, yeah.
So we're at about 6%. And I can tell you, typical agencies they hover somewhere in the 5 to 10% range.
Now, I know that you mentioned that that there are times where warnings are given and that you keep track of those warnings. Is there any consideration to potentially, considering that what the purpose of parking enforcement is, of, giving a person who makes an appeal just one freebie, just in the sense that it'll save some time on the enforcement side for you, having to go through that process, where you just keep track and it's just, person makes an appeal, whatever the reason is that first time, you just grant that appeal that first time, and that's their one kind of get out of jail free card. Because people do make mistakes, honest mistakes, and I'm curious, I'm sure, I don't know, it seems like you nerd out on this stuff, so I'm sure you have an idea of like what percentage are repeat offenders versus, like how many unique offenders there are in terms of parking enforcement?
And in the administrative process, the people who are going through that process that is one of the key pieces that they look at. When somebody's been issued 10 cites before and now they're appealing this one, it does kind of change the context of what that is. So if this is the person's first cite, they don't have anything in the system, and we keep it active in the system for 5 years. So if that bears into their decision on what that process is and whether it's an honest mistake or whether it's not.
Excellent. And then 2 more questions from me. How is the determination of the fine made in terms of the amount of the fine relative to whatever is being enforced? So I don't know, the fine is somewhere in the $50 to $60 range now? Okay.
But depending on the citation, yes. The average, I would say, is probably in that $50 to $60 range.
How is that determination made in terms of the amount?
I can tell you that determination had already been made before I got here, and each year it is on the citywide fee schedule that council considers whether or not to make any adjustments to.
Got it. Is parking enforcement a revenue generating, is a revenue positive, let's call it enterprise?
No, so it's, sorry, it's, when we looked at the revenue and expenses, I did put fiscal year 23-24 into the staff report to give kind of a flavor of what that is. It is not something where the city is generating a significant amount of revenue and this is being used for something else. It is designed as a system that is self-sufficient. And the goal would be, if there was additional revenue made, it goes back into the parking program in a variety of ways.
But that revenue isn't significant from.
No, it's on a $14 million budget, it was less than $1 million one way or the other. I looked back 3 years and it was, we lost a little this year, we made a little this year, but less than, I mean, just that is what, less than 6% or whatever it is of the overall budget, so.
Yeah, and I really do appreciate it because, number one, it gives us perspective on the commission in terms of that, but it's one of the most common questions that I get. It's not number one, I'll let you all guess what that is, in terms of Transportation and Parking Commission, but it is number two, which is, tickets, enforcement. So it helps in the sense that, I see us as one of the first lines of community engagement in terms of our role. And so it really helps to be able to just honestly answer these questions in a way that says, look, this is the purpose of parking enforcement. And it's not a revenue generator. They don't have a quota. They're not sitting around going, like, here's another one. Although I think the type of person that maybe enjoys doing that job probably, creates, an internal incentive system for themselves in order to write tickets. They take pride in what they do. I wish they didn't take as much pride in what they did as far as parking enforcement is considered, like with verve and gusto. But this helps in being able to explain to people who ask these questions, and also just my own questions that popped up, what these are. So I really do appreciate not only the presentation, but the thoughtful answers to my questions. And I appreciate the commission, the chair, giving me an opportunity to ask some of these questions.
If I
Yes,
just
Commissioner Ortega.
add a couple of things, Tad, if you can just, couple of questions for you. If you can just explain the funds that are being generated by Parking Task Force. I just want you to let them know that it's not going to the general fund, it's going to the parking funds. And what does parking funds are actually doing here? And the other thing that you can maybe elaborate on a little bit is that the parking enforcement, what are the benefits? You can bring Montrose as an example, that if you wouldn't have done those enforcement, all the chaos, what kind of a chaos would have happened? So if you can just explain that, I think everybody would get a better understanding exactly why those parking enforcements are there. It's not that to give people hardship, it's just to create order, and so everybody can benefit out of it. And the funds that you generate from which is very minimal, and you and I went over it together, and what do we do with those parking funds? And if you can just elaborate. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I am going to go in a little deeper on this one. So the parking study, what I'm looking at right now is the Montrose parking analysis. One quick plug, GlendaleParking.com takes you straight to our website. And from there, you can get access to the parking studies. You can get access to parking enforcement and the links to our vendor for citations, to a lot of things. So Glendale Parking, all one word. On this parking study, when we did this initially, we went up to Montrose and the Montrose Shopping Park Association, and the consultant had come up with 12 items and said, these are the 12 items that we think you need to improve your parking program. And one of the things that we came up with was, I said, look, these are the 12 items they're recommending. What's your priority order? I want to know from you, what do you see that would be the most impactful and have the biggest turnaround for you? Number one became enhancing parking enforcement. Number two was evaluating and implementing the parking enforcement technology that we did. Because for the time limits up there in Montrose, a lot of the parking lots are 3 hours. So to enforce that, you have to go up there the first time. You have to mark the vehicles or take license plates or do whatever. Then you have to come back 3 hours later and see which cars moved. It is so time consuming on the enforcement side that finding an easier way and finding a way that would do it. Now they can drive by at 20 miles an hour and capture those plates and drive by that same street 3 hours later, and it just pops up and says, yeah, this one violated, here's the pictures. So it is so much more efficient to be able to do it that now we can respond. Back then, they were not getting a response for parking enforcement. We didn't have the staff, we had turnover, we had a lot of issues at the time. Some of this was related to businesses that weren't even inside Glendale that were coming and poaching on Glendale's parking. Some of it was residents that were just north on the county side that would park in our parking lots and store their vehicles there. So there was a whole lot of other issues that we needed consistent enforcement in order to be able to resolve. So sometimes it is truly, it seems like we're heavy-handed, it seems like there's a perception of this, but we get a lot of complaints from the businesses that, look, I've got people that are coming here and sitting here for all day long, they're employees, I need these parking spaces for turnover for my customers, please get up here, how soon can you come, how often can you come? So we're trying to design a system that will work for everybody, that we can react to when we get those complaints and send more. And if we're not seeing that there's violations, I would love to your point, I would love to not issue another parking citation in Glendale. If everybody would just follow the rules, that'd be very easy for me to do. And so I think that's important. On the revenue side, we break the revenue down several different ways. And Montrose is another good example of where the parking meter revenue is specific to that area. We've set up the zones where we can track it by where it's generated. And so we have Honolulu and a lot of the side streets that do have parking meters up there. And I can tell you budget-wise, it brings in the neighborhood of $200,000 a year. Now, when you start looking at the staff that has to go up there and collect the meters, when you start looking at the fees that we have to pay for credit card processing now that we have pay by phone on those meters, when you look at the maintenance that goes into the parking lots, when you look at all of the different areas, we tackle all of those problems out of that $200,000 and out of the parking fund. So we're able to have the resources to be able to adapt to these things without burdening the general fund with it, which is huge. So that we don't rely on pulling those resources out from other people. It really is more of a user tax where the users are paying for the parking space, and then that money is going right back into providing that parking space and providing it as best we can.
Thank you.
Other comments and questions? Okay, Commissioner Lester.
Yes. Thanks, Mr. Dombrowski. That was a really interesting presentation. I also really enjoyed the questions and the answers. Especially given the fact that Commissioner Odebagian has special experience with Montrose, I think that a lot of what you talked about was answering questions that were given in a previous meeting. And I think it's really good to just have the discussion in public. This is, like you say, a subject that arouses passion. And to have a sense that the city operates in good faith, it's doing its best to be fair, and that the rules exist for a reason. I think I'm probably not the only one here who can admit that once in my life I have gotten a parking ticket. To this day, I still feel like I just didn't understand the rules and I didn't see the sign, or I read it wrong or something like that. But at the same time, just understanding that parking is it's a fundamental kind of like public asset in the city. And its management is important to make sure, like you say, that various interests are served. If you're a business person, you might have a different view of that parking place than the person hunting for the parking place. They want the turnover, you know? So it's really, I think this is great to have this discussion in public. I think my only, my question, I actually, this is the thing that I personally have been asked about the most frequently, is something related to parking. And I guess it would just be like, again, clarifying an avenue to interface with the city and get answers to questions or requests. I've given like, oh, well, you can contact this person, that person. Yeah, I mean, I think that what often happens with these things is that it's such a big system that it's hard for someone to come in with a small problem and say, I need my problem fixed. But, you know, it's a big, that affects that affects that. For example, somebody asked me about Cerritos Elementary a year or two ago. They wanted to do drop-off, and there was something going on either with the sweeping or the parking at the dealerships. And they couldn't get an adjustment to the hours so that it would be easier for parents to park to be able to walk their kids up because the line was so long. So they couldn't get it changed because of the schedule for the sweepers, this kind of thing. So I guess it would be nice for residents to be able to feel like there's a responsive and understandable reply when they have things like this. I felt there was some frustration there in this resident, so like basically being able to contact the city with problems and like answering them to their satisfaction, and when possible, making the small problems solvable.
Commissioner Lester, to your point, I wanted to do two things. Number one, the phone number, 818-548-3945 is the best way. And what I will say on Cerritos has a bunch of different dynamics. I have worked, a couple years ago, I worked with our traffic engineering folks because there was some red curb that had been abandoned. We had teacher parking issues. We had a whole bunch of stuff that we were able to go down there. A lot of times, you wouldn't believe what one or two spaces, how big of a difference it really can make. And that's what we found. We found some, I think they had created bump outs after originally. And so originally it was used kind of as a through zone and had been red curbed. But once you had a bump out there, it allowed for more parking to be used there. And we were able to accommodate some teacher parking in there to alleviate the teachers' parking in what turned out to be a better area for the drop-off zone. So I know there's some of these things, you have to balance that with the residents who are in the area that have preferential parking on their street. There's a whole bunch of dynamics that come, but the customer service that I shot up, number one, we deal with these calls regularly. We get requests regularly like this. We will look at them. We will try and improve the parking situation if we can, however that is.
Thank you. Commissioner Boston?
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm so intrigued and appreciate the interesting presentation and similarly interesting questions too. It's been a couple years that I've been on the commission and haven't learned much of this great information. So I did have a couple of questions. One is, and I apologize, I feel like I should know this, but are there dynamic rates for parking? That is, I guess the question is, how do you determine parking rates, and is it different in different places within the city?
Commissioner Bonston, that's a great question. Dynamic rates are something that is popular in certain places. I know San Francisco's done it. LA's even played around with it. We do not have dynamic rates. Typically, in both of these parking studies, one of the things that was addressed was rates. And whether it was surveying private, in our downtown area, for instance, we will survey private garages. If it's cheaper to park on street on Brand Boulevard than it is in the private garages behind, everybody's gonna do it. It's gonna fill up Brand Boulevard. So mixing the off-street and the on-street and all of those different dynamics together helps you see whether the price you've set is working or have conditions changed to where now you need to look at revisiting some of those costs and see what that looks like. It's really done to, I have I'm going to say in the neighborhood of 600 spaces on street in the downtown, and we have 2,000 just in the garages. So
Really?
it is such prime parking that we have to encourage. We have 90 minutes free in our downtown garages. So we have to do something to encourage as many people to go into those garages as possible because we just do not have the capacity on street.
That's interesting. I also appreciated reading about the capital improvement program, and of course also the fact that the money that you bring in ends up being utilized for your own department and other kind of related services. And the capital improvement program looks pretty interesting. I guess I have like an aside. I really loved, and maybe you didn't write it, I don't know. There's a final sentence that talks about the programs. And it says, this integrated approach supports the city's overall growth, sustainability, and the enhancement of public spaces, ensuring the parking system remains responsive to the evolving needs of the community. Beautifully written. I mean, and it's also true that that's a lot of infrastructure that we have opportunity for. I was sort of curious, thinking lately with our storms and having seen in recent years some of the impacts of so much hardscape that we have in our cities and what that means when we receive storms and water and we can't capture it. So I was sort of curious, in that vein of sustainability, what you look at in terms of parking lots, if there's any opportunity, or parking garages, or what sustainability kind of means in that context. I was curious.
I can honestly say that for that context, I haven't looked at it. I know in our parking garages, for instance, that because it's parked there, we have an annual program that comes in for pressure washing, and they have to recapture and reclaim all of that water because it can't be reutilized. It has to be dumped just because it could be mixed with oil, it could be mixed with everything else. So I don't know if there's the opportunities for that I would want, but I do know that it's a great suggestion. We can look into it and see with some of our other partners in it if there's opportunities there.
Thank you. A random aside, but otherwise very interesting. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, I have a couple of questions. Before moving to the questions, I would like to also thank Mr. Ted Dombrowski. I actually had a question too regarding one of the schools drop-off, pick-up, not myself, but rather the owner of the place. They contacted me, and thanks to Marine, I was able to reach out to Ted, and he was actually very helpful, very, very fast. I don't know how that matter continued. They have all your information, but it was actually not easy first to figure out who to go to. And then, through Marine, I was able to reach out. So yes, I don't know if other people know how to reach out, who to reach out. So as they mentioned before, so it would be a really good resource for them if they can, if they know that. As far as the questions regarding the pay by phone, I personally have used it, and as a feedback, one thing that I think it's lacking is when you have your license plate in there. I had, for example, my license plate in there. I've used that meter, and then one day I had a loaner car, and that's where I actually came across the problem when you can't really change your license plate in there. I ended up paying, and then it ended up being under the car that wasn't in my possession at that moment. So I don't know what kind of feedbacks you guys get regarding it, but is this something you have looked into?
I have not gotten that particular feedback, Chair Avagian. I have, when we first did the presentations with the company, there was supposed to be a way that you could log multiple cars, multiple vehicles and license plates into the system. And that was one of the examples used is people have spouses, people have kids. We want to be able to put them all in there, or go to something for one time if you had a rental car or something that wouldn't be yours and you didn't want to store it. So my understanding is, but I would have to dive into the app in detail in order to see exactly where to do
No,
that.
here in Glendale. Yeah, that's in Glendale. Pay by phone. I think I was on Broadway Street,
The
or
ones that has the secret.
yes, the one that has. By the way, those still have the code. So when your guys are saying do not use the code, download the app, is there a way to possibly maybe not have a QR code if it's something that is I don't know, like open? It's making fraudulent impression or people are using that, taking advantage of that. So maybe we should remove the QR codes and not have it at all.
I think the QR code takes you to the website. To
So,
download
Yes,
the
but
so
what?
one thing, and I had a couple in one of these pictures, so I was just going to go forward and see. Down at the bottom left in the picture, it has the stickers on it. There's two things that actually you can see right here. One is very clearly what zone it is. 13 something is the zone that it's in. And typically your phone is supposed to populate that based on your location
It does.
and say, here's where we're at. Should I pay in this zone? But whether you there's two options for it. There's three options. There is downloading the app and doing it as you would any other app. There is a website that you can actually go to and do it as a one-time. And then there is also a phone number, and you can actually walk it through just like you could back in the day, and touch tone phone and press 1 for this, press 2 for this. So there are different ways of communicating it. The one that I have found easiest with everybody that I talk to is the app, whether it's secure, whether it's the interaction, but adding vehicles, that kind of thing. It may not be possible if you go through the website and do it as a one-time user on the website, but it may be something that's more integrated with the app. So I would suggest that. The other thing that we do that is nice for the app, we just had a press release about it a while ago, that we added Armenian as a language to one of their many. They already had 11 or 12 languages in the app that had already been converted. And then on the website, they use Google Translate so that you'd be able to use a host of other ones. So there are other options that we've been able to do that weren't initially in what we had with the Extend My Phone that have been benefits. But I will definitely look at the vehicles and see what those
I
options
was in
are.
a hurry, and then I realized that whatever payment I made basically was with my actual car's license plate. Luckily, I did not get a ticket, but it was definitely was going to be the possibility to do, because I don't know whether it gives the option to add at that moment or one time. If it does, then I was in a hurry, I didn't notice it. But I don't know how challenging it is for the person who's not familiar and just downloading the app or just registering. So I'm gonna look into it myself again too. But yeah, if you guys can check it out as well. And then as far as the
Chair
QR
Vaughan,
code,
if
yes.
I may, so it defaults to the first vehicle that you have listed.
Yes.
But there's a arrow to the right that allows you to drop down. You can add up to five vehicles. So if you have that new vehicle, you can add it at one time and just remove it after. But to your point, it defaults to your, if you only have one, then it defaults to that one. And like in my app right now, I have two vehicles, so it's defaulting on the first one I listed.
Okay, got it. Okay, and then as far as the QR code, if it's not encouraged, as far as the QR codes, if it's not encouraged, so we're not considering of removing it?
Correct. So QR codes we do not use for meter payments. And the fraudulent piece of this, just for your own understanding, the fraudulent piece actually isn't the $2 or $1 or 50 cents that they're getting. They want the credit card information. That's the problem with a lot of these, is they're just trying to get the credit card information. If they can get 10 credit cards, they can sell 10 credit cards, they're done. So it's really, that's where I say, if there's QR codes out there, a lot of the private operators use them for their own lots. They're coming up with these challenges right now. We do not have QR codes where you can just snap a picture and make a payment. You should either download the app, or you should do it off of the website that's printed on the meter.
I see. Another question I had, I made a note about the part that you were saying, while in changing the signs were very challenging when you guys changed the operating hours. During that time, it was I don't know, like a kind of like a chaotic situation. Were people getting citations during that time, or?
So no, they weren't. The common hours, we basically took away 2 hours in the morning, and we added 2 hours at midnight. And so during the time as we were changing the signs, we weren't enforcing past the 10 o'clock until the signs had already been converted to midnight. And then I think we even, because it was new, I think we even went through a month or two of issuing warning sites if it was between 10 and midnight.
Okay.
to the first go around, where just as a courtesy, if there was anybody that was doing it, we would just issue warning sites to kind of get the message out.
Got it. And basically, as of now, from 8 a.m. to 12 a.m., if you park anywhere in downtown Glendale, you have to pay. There is no
Correct.
free parking at all.
There's 90 minutes free parking in our parking
in the parking
structures, but anywhere on street or in the parking lots, that is correct.
I see. Okay. And then one more question, and I don't want to sound dumb, but can somebody please educate me regarding the front license plate situation? I know California state enforces to have both front and back, but a lot of times it's kind of like a common understanding that that's okay, you don't have a front license plate. I'm in the same situation. I don't have a front license plate. And here and there, sometimes I get a ticket. I don't want to put that front license plate. I know many people don't. So what's the matter with this? And then since this is kind of like a chain reaction, already a lot of people are not happy with the pilot project we're going to have as far as the speed cameras. Now, if we're going to make it sound like, oh, now you're going to have to get ticketed because of the front license plate, because there are going to be cameras, they need to capture your front license plate. I don't want the city be like, I don't know, we're constantly issuing tickets because of that. Okay, it's a law enforcement, but I mean, it's also a welcoming city, and I don't want people to be afraid to pass through Glendale,
You
you
gotta
know?
put your front license plate, to be honest with you. I mean, that's something you have to do. So I don't know why wouldn't you want to put the license plate, but that's a must.
And
But,
it didn't come with the license plate.
no, it does.
So I will say this, the number one complaint that we're getting these days about the front license plate is for people who have Teslas, for people who, there's certain cars that
Yes.
either aren't issuing a mounting plate for the front or.
Same here.
Yeah, and so, and it is fairly common. California law still requires, at the state level, still requires 2 license plates. It still requires one on the front and one on the back. One of the, I'm just gonna say it's really cool. It was another city employee who brought it to my attention. Really awesome feature. You can Google it and you can download it. California actually approved for a company to issue stickers. And that is one of the best solutions I've seen to the people that are complaining about Teslas and high-end cars. They basically, you send your front plate that was issued to your vehicle into them. They reprint it as a sticker that goes on your car, and the registration and everything else goes on the back plate. So the front plate just stays with the car and is on as a sticker. And that has solved a lot of the issues with not having a mounting plate, not being able to do this. Who do I take this to? Because most of them were people who just couldn't practically put it on.
Okay.
Can I just bring one comment if you're done?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to add something else. Your department is one of the most important departments in the city of Glendale, and the budgeting for your department is very minimal. And the amount of work that you guys do, it's just like, once I got to know exactly what is it that we're doing in here, it's, for example, like all the parklets that has been built on Montrose, because they took away 1 or 2 parking spots, there's a money that is being generated from those parking stalls to the parking fund, and we wanted to make sure that that money does not go to the general fund because it will get disappeared. We wanted to get redirected to the parking fund so they can do the necessary work for the city. And I cannot, I mean, your work is very, very important. For example, up in Montrose, all the parking, we don't have parking structures. And it's extremely challenging for us up there. And your presence there, and with that little funds that you guys have, you were able to manage all the, incoming and outgoing cars and everything else. So I encourage, if there is any kind of a way that we can increase your budget somehow. I mean, the Park Act money goes to you guys now. You use it for even slurry seal on the parking lots. A lot of stuff that it's been done with just your department, and nobody knows about it. So I don't know if there is a way of we can let people know exactly how important your department is and all the good things.
Just did, Commissioner.
I mean, I don't know. It's very important, and I really want to thank you for all that you do. It's very important. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Chair,
Conrad.
just a few more that popped up while everybody was making their excellent comments and asking their questions. Valet. Just briefly, what's that process look like for somebody to, request valet parking on, especially Brand? And how does somebody who's parking check to see if it's actually, through the city or if it's just a valet service that's taking up 3 or 4 parking spaces?
Great question, Commissioner Mahane. It's, we do not have valet staff. It is all private companies who do this. They have to meet the minimum insurance standards. They submit a valet application requesting whatever it is that they would like to do. And then we review that to make sure that it is in the best interests of public parking. If they're going to take, for instance, 3 prime spaces on Brand, I want to make sure they're parking more than 3 vehicles. I want to make sure they're taking those to an off-street location somewhere, and that the customers, that can now handle more customers than I could by just having it as 3 spaces out there. So if it increases it, we will work with the valet companies. There's several of them that sometimes it's a one-time event. Sometimes there's certain locations that, every Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, it's these 4 spaces for valet. And we put up permanent signage. They pay for those spaces a year in advance. And to be able to have that, and we'll make sure they have all the proper insurance and everything else so that they are completely legitimate and they get issued a permit. So they should have the permit on site if there was any questions to it.
So they pay a flat fee and then they can determine whatever the price of the valet is at that point.
Correct.
Got
We
it.
do not
No
put
revenue
any,
sharing.
no, and we don't set any limits one way or the other. It's up to them for them to determine market demand.
Got it. Storage of plate information of, you mentioned that the car can drive 20 miles per hour by and just pick up license plate. Are you storing the information, the license plate information for non-offenders who don't match, who aren't, are you storing that information in any way? Or is the city using it, leveraging that information in any way? Who's parking where? I understand it's public, and so there is no expectation of privacy in public, but it's a little bit different if the government is storing license plate information or leveraging that in some way, shape, or form.
That is correct, Commissioner. It is a challenging question because the purpose isn't to store all that. We don't have the room. We don't want it. But there are certain times when we may say, and we did this recently, where we said, you know what, we're gonna use that information to look at the license plates in particular and find the parking occupancy patterns and determine, do we have the turnover? We did it for Montrose's parking study, where we're actually taking that information and we'll store it until we have the information that we need to determine whatever we're returning, and then we can flush all the information. It's not like we want to keep that because it costs money to store it. So I generally speaking, to your initial question, generally speaking, we're keeping it for only the violators and attaching it to the violations, and then the rest of it just gets flushed.
Excellent, thank you. And last question, holidays and notifications. One of my favorite things that I feel like I have to do is on holidays, watching people stand there paying for their parking and then just rolling the window down and letting them know, like, hey, it's Martin Luther King, like, no parking. How is holiday notification handled? Because I know that the parking meters still accept payment, which is mind-boggling to me, that there isn't just a message that'll make everybody's day that says, hey, today is a holiday, no parking necessary. So could you go into that a little bit in terms of holiday notifications so that I can stop my side gig as holiday parking Santa, driving around the city telling people they don't have to pay for parking?
So the holidays are established in the municipal code, and it states clearly what those holidays are. It is possible to turn them into, in the multi-space meters, it is possible to turn that for those days and turn it off and just put a message up that says, thank you, free parking. But it's not possible for the single space meters. So the question is whether or not we have a consistent program or whether we have some messaging, but some not. And it's challenging no matter what we decide. Right now, I think it's been chosen for consistency to avoid confusion. However, it's not obviously not having that effect because there is some confusion with it. And people do pay. And we don't know what those numbers are because typically on our single space meters, for instance, there's meters in front of City Hall. They may get collected once or twice a week. So we don't know exactly who paid on which day for the amount of money that's in there to know whether they paid for the holiday or not. The digital meters, we can actually figure out exactly how much came in for those days and whether or not it really is a problem. And last I noted when I had looked at it, and this was years ago, but we had looked at it to see how big the problem was. It wasn't that big. It was
It's not a big problem. It's just the amount of joy that I see on people's faces that I saved them $1.50 is just, it's something, if it were an easy solution, but based upon your explanation, it seems like you're trying to stay consistent. And so given the fact that you don't have the ability to just turn it off on a specific day for every single parking spot, you're choosing not to turn it off at all. Got it. That's all. Thank you.
I didn't know that during holidays we don't pay for parking, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Santa, parking Santa.
Holiday Santa.
I wonder if our student commissioner has questions or comments.
I really liked the presentation and I appreciated that informative and knowledgeable question and answer moments. I just have one question. Maybe it is more for the mass of the students who like to do research and the research stuff. Like it's personal. It is coming from the personal interest. The studies that you did, like the books that you showed me, the analyses, why specifically those two locations? Was it because of the rate of the violations that happened there? Like that's why you analyzed and studied that locations? Or because of the municipal interest, like the city wanted just to study those locations? I don't know if it's an interesting question. I just got interested.
That is a great question, actually. I would say we have 3 metered areas in the city, and typically, historically, long before I was ever here, most of those metered areas have been established, and you establish those based on a response. It's a very reactive process. And so we looked at 2 of those areas, one being Montrose, where we were hearing the feedback, whether it was on the customer side or from the business associations, and the same with downtown. There were a whole bunch of issues that were coming up of, have you thought about this? Have you dealt with this? What can we do to change this? And so those 2 areas were identified just from a whole host of things as, you know what, if we're going to go through getting a parking consultant, go through logging license plates, figuring out a lot of data that we can try and figure out what the parking patterns are and what the best processes are to create the best parking program. Those 2 are the areas that really highlighted for the city of Glendale.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much.
No more comments and questions? Thank you very much, Ted, for the great presentation. And I believe this was put on the agenda by your request, right? Commissioner Armenian's request. So thank you very much. It was very, very helpful. Moving to the next item, which is the item A, right? Going back to 7A. Information regarding extension of street parking, the limits up for 4 hours. Okay.
So as we mentioned, the presentation was quite a bit of information. We did talk about our meter program. We did talk about limits. So if we didn't capture what you were asking for, then we can obviously come back with a more informative report. But again, we wanted to make this the jump-off point. But if the commission does have any further items they want us to review and consider for a future information report, we're happy to do so.
Yeah, from my perspective, that pretty much knocked it out of the park. It was a grand slam in terms of the information, looking for the information, and I know that given some of those exceptions that we talked about, I feel much more comfortable and confident that you and your department are dealing with those exceptions and with the care that they deserve, because it can be infuriating for somebody to actually have paid for their parking and then walk over and see the person writing a ticket and then showing them the receipt, and then they're going like, sorry. So that, I guess that righteous rage is understandable, but hopefully I will encourage them to watch this so that they understand as well and they see it, and that I think there's confidence that you all are handling this with the care it deserves.
Moving to the next one. Information report? No, oral communication. Oh, oral communication.
Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. The commission may question the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. There are no public comments at this time.
Okay, next item, 9, staff reports. Comments?
Yeah, just thank you. I really do appreciate the responsiveness. Initially, when I kind of saw it on the agenda, I reached out because I didn't know if it was going to be responsive to, the questions that I had asked, but I really do appreciate the thoroughness with which you all approached it. And I imagine also 2025 is going to be a busy year for us, just in terms of the projects that are continuing to come up and some of the recent discussions. I know in December there was the decision by the council to remove the North Brand demonstration project for the bike lanes. I think anybody in the public, I watched that meeting in real time. Anybody in the public that's interested can go back to that December 10th meeting. There was quite a lot of information. But I do know that this is going to be a heated issue on both sides in terms of what's coming forward. So can you give us a preview of what we might be seeing over the next several meetings that have to do specifically with bike lanes and the continuation of the plan that that the commission approved in terms of the bike plan, the 20-year bike plan?
So I will tell you that the first half of the TPC's calendar is going to be busy. I have been talking to staff about coordinating a special meeting for the upcoming month of February. So we are scheduled to discuss to give the commission an update on our speed, as mentioned earlier by Mr. Dombrowski. So we will give an update on the AB 645, which is the speed camera. So we will, prior to going to the council, we will bring this before the commission. And we also there are some multimodal projects that are slated to be discussed at the TBC. So we do have a pretty full docket. In the next 2 or 3 meetings, you guys will have a handful of items for your consideration.
I actually have a question regarding the December 10 meeting, because originally during our meeting, I asked about the pilot project, the North Brand Boulevard bike lanes, and I wanted to see what the analysis are, what the results are and everything. And you have mentioned that it's actually going to be presented to the city council. And you even asked whether we want to see that before or we don't, or after, because before actually wasn't even going to be a time anymore because it was right after the TPC. And then I realized that the city council was presented by 3 different options during that meeting, which never was presented to the TPC commission. And had that kind of like an overview happened before the city council, we would probably have seen those options and made a recommendation on our end as well. So I would like to understand how this was determined and then why TPC was not involved in the process of reviewing those 3 recommendations before it was presented to the city council.
Thank you, Chairperson. But a point of order, I just wanted to make a correction. The February meeting is not a special meeting. Well, we will seek special meetings for the odd month meetings that we will be canvassing the commission to schedule. So I just want to make that clarification for the record. So the February meeting will be a regularly scheduled meeting. But relative to the North Brand, so I know there was comments made and a request to bring back the North Brand item. But unfortunately, the North Brand item, the timing of it, when you first brought up the request to bring that item before the commission, we had already slated and it was agendized to be before the city council, but the item was taken off, and then we got further direction. So ultimately, the direction came from the city council as to what they wanted to see. So obviously, in some certain regards, the TPC is granted certain rights by the municipal code. In other instances, it's a form of outreach. So it's more informational and for the council to understand that the TPC is on board with some of the decisions that are being made. So in this instance, why we didn't come back to the commission was because we received specific direction from the city council.
In cases like this, there is no option to notify the city council that TPC hasn't seen this, and then maybe we should see the recommendations first before. I understand that there is a recommendation that comes from the city council, but there is a reason why TPC exists in general, right?
So of course, like I mentioned, there are stuff that are governed by the municipal code that the TPC must weigh in on, and in other instances, it's advisory, and we provide that as a form of outreach and feedback to the council to let them know where the commission lies. And it's not just this commission; it's other commissions depending on the subject matter. So ultimately, we try to before going to the city council. In this instance, coming before the TPC, so that we could solicit that feedback from the commission and ultimately feed that back to the city council.
Okay.
Quick follow-up on that. Would there be an opportunity or a way that in those types of cases where you get direction from city council and the timing is such that it's tight, is there any way that you can give the TPC a courtesy notification? If it's not during a meeting, bringing it up specifically during a meeting, maybe just saying, hey, this is going to go in front of city council. We have specific direction from council. Here's a memo or a summation of what we're going to be presenting and the options that we're looking at. That would, I think, feel a little bit better in terms of informational than learning that it's going onto the agenda when the agendas are posted. So is there that option that could be provided as an informational memo or some sort of summary to the TPC?
I could defer with the city attorney's office and staff. Obviously, the information that we're putting together, we prepare for the city council, so it's just the medium by which we provide you guys the information, whether it be a memo, whether it be a report. Nonetheless, we can figure out how to best communicate with the TPC and when we feel it's appropriate, because obviously we want to have kind of a standard by which we do this. We don't want to make it a subjective kind of notification. We have to kind of regroup and kind of talk about how we do that so it's more objective as opposed to, well, I think this is what the TPC may want to. So we can kind of come back and discuss it, and maybe at our next report, I'll give you an informal report so that we can get clear direction, because obviously these multimodal projects, you kind of alluded to in terms of what the community typically talks to the commission about. So we want to just be clear on what the direction is, because I don't want to leave it to any form of subjectivity. So once we get clear direction on what specifically you're asking for, we can mobilize with the city attorney's office and staff to ensure that we're providing you guys with that information.
And Commissioner Mirian and Chair Vaughan, I would just add that in terms of discussion on a matter within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission, that would need to be in an open noticed meeting pursuant to the Brown Act. So the commission could not have, for instance, an offline discussion regarding a matter that's on its way to the city council for consideration, even if you've seen it in the past.
No, that's understood. But like, for example, on my time on the audit committee, prior to meetings, audit reports were sent out to the audit committee, and they were done in real time, and then they were presented, during an audit committee meeting in the future. Or if something was coming in front of council that was under the purview of audit, there would be a kind of a courtesy notice prior to the agenda going live that, hey, there's this thing, this is what we're looking at. And at least as the chair, I was getting some eyes on it just for notification process so that I can then, make a determination of future agenda items. It was just more of a courtesy in terms of providing the information. I strongly agree. There was no discussion. It wasn't for discussion purposes. The discussion that we had regarding those items were during the meetings. But those items were sent out for our review, in real time. And I thought it was extremely beneficial when we did receive them. So I understand that this is a little bit different because these were options that were specifically directed to you by the city council regarding the decision that they were going to make on December 10th. It was just surprising that these options were options that, at least during my time, I never even, there was no conception that was even a possibility. Any of those were a possibility. And so it just seemed like it came out of left field, some of the options. And I understand, I totally understand that had to do with the specific timing and the manner in which, this very contentious issue kind of came up in front of the city council. But if there is an opportunity for that, I think at least having the chair being able to see it, then the chair can make make whatever request she'd like regarding that, and then you could give the feedback to her. I as a commissioner would feel very comfortable with that. It's not like I have to see it, but I think it would at least serve if the chair saw it. Just some feedback.
So like I mentioned, I could speak to staff in terms of, because we have a prescribed process by which we do our outreach in terms of going before the TPC and ultimately before the city council. But that potential loop back is an option that we haven't really considered, because typically it's linear, right? We're not kind of coming back to the project elements that you guys have already reviewed and provided direction on. So I think North Brand is probably an anomaly. But if there is an opportunity to eventually, because we also prescribe, as part of this process, we build in the TPC schedule into the overall schedule of the outreach and ultimately to the project, right? So looking for opportunities to come back if there is an opportunity to come back, or how we communicate that. Like I said, I can speak to the to staff and to the city attorney to ensure that at least at a minimum, you guys are getting the FYI.
That would be amazing. Thank you very much. I guess, okay, I'll just say a couple of things before we adjourn the meeting. I recently had the privilege of delivering my baby at Glendale Memorial Hospital.
Yeah.
And I wanted
Boy
to
or girl?
actually, boy, I
Very
wanted
good.
to thank the Glendale Memorial Hospital Labor and Delivery Department. It was amazing to experience firsthand our healthcare system, how caring they are, how the services are great and available in our city for us. and everyone else to actually use. I was amazed to learn that a lot of people come to our hospitals from not Glendale, outside of Glendale. So thank you very much to all the staff and my phenomenal attending physician, Dr. Kevin Gulliston, as well. So thank you. And also, I wanted to extend my heartfelt thanks to City of Glendale team, the entire team, the manager Rubik Golanian, Mayor Elena Satrian, first responders for the amazing job they did during the California disaster, because they were very involved with the community, always there, and then the cooperation among the departments were very, very amazing, just unbelievable. So thank you very much, and all your efforts are deeply appreciated. That's it. I don't have anything else.
I just want to wish you and your family every happiness.
Thank you very
Congratulations again.
much. Thank you very much. Okay, so next item is number 10, which is adjournment. Do I have a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second? Or do I don't need a second?
You do need a second, Chair Vaughan.
Second it.
Okay, so moved by Commissioner Amirian, seconded by Commissioner Bonston to adjourn the meeting.